Today, we are going to explore a story of three men, three prisoners, who escaped from the most secure prison in America, a place called Alcatraz. On a cold night in June 1962, three prisoners vanished from the most secure prison in America, a prison surrounded by freezing water, powerful currents, sharp rocks, and constant surveillance. The prison was called Alcatraz. For decades, officials claimed that no one could escape from it. Yet somehow, three men disappeared without a trace. No bodies were ever found. No confirmed sightings were ever proven. And more than 60 years later, the mystery remains unsolved. Did they drown in the icy waters of San Francisco Bay? Or did they pull off the greatest prison escape in American history? This is the story of the Alcatraz escape. Long before it became famous, Alcatraz was a military fortress. The rocky island sat in the middle of San Francisco Bay. The location itself was a natural prison. The water surrounding the island was freezing. Strong currents could easily pull swimmers out to sea. Even experienced swimmers struggled to survive. Because of these conditions, American authorities believed the island was the perfect place to house dangerous criminals. In 1934, the federal government turned Alcatraz into a maximum security prison. Its purpose was simple: to hold prisoners who caused problems in other prisons. The worst of the worst. Soon, some of America's most notorious criminals arrived: bank robbers, gangsters, murderers, and organized crime figures. Among them was the infamous gangster, Al Capone. Life inside Alcatraz was harsh. Prisoners spent much of their time locked in small cells. Rules were strict. Punishments were severe. Guards constantly watched every movement. The prison quickly earned a reputation for being impossible to escape. But some prisoners still tried. Most failed. Some were caught immediately, others drowned. At least that's what officials believed. Then came three men who were willing to risk everything. The first man was Frank Morris, born in 1926. Morris had spent much of his life in trouble. He was highly intelligent. His IQ reportedly placed him well above average. But instead of using his intelligence for success, he became a criminal. Over the years, he escaped from several institutions. Authorities considered him extremely dangerous. In January 1960, he arrived at Alcatraz. Then there were two brothers, John Anglin and Clarence Anglin. The Anglin brothers came from a poor family. They had grown up working farms and picking fruit. Eventually, they turned to crime, mostly bank robberies. Unlike many prisoners, the brothers were skilled swimmers, a skill that would later become very important. Inside Alcatraz, the three men became friends, and together, they began planning something extraordinary: an escape. Most prisoners looked at Alcatraz and saw walls. Morris saw weaknesses. He carefully studied every detail of the prison, every pipe, every vent, every crack behind their cells. The men discovered something interesting. The concrete surrounding a ventilation opening was weakening because of moisture and age. Night after night, they secretly chipped away at the wall. Their tools were surprisingly simple: metal spoons, homemade drills, pieces of stolen equipment to hide their work. They placed cardboard over the holes. Whenever guards walked by, everything appeared normal. The prisoners worked slowly, patiently. Month after month, no one noticed, or at least, no one realized what was happening. The plan was becoming reality. Behind the cell walls was a hidden utility corridor. Few guards paid attention to it. Once the prisoners enlarged the openings, they could enter the corridor. This secret area became their workshop. Every night, after lights out, the men climbed through the holes. Then they worked in complete secrecy. They stole materials from around the prison: raincoats, rubber, wood, glue, tools, anything useful. The prisoners knew that escaping the cells wasn't enough. They needed a way off the island. So they began building something incredible: a homemade raft, made entirely from prison raincoats. More than 50 raincoats were stitched together. The seams were sealed. The raft slowly took shape. They even built life jackets. Everything had to work perfectly. One mistake could mean death. The prisoners faced another problem: nighttime bed checks. If guards noticed empty beds, the escape would fail instantly. So they came up with a remarkable solution: dummy heads. Using soap, paper, concrete dust, and paint, They created realistic human heads. Hair was collected from the prison barber shop. The heads looked surprisingly convincing. At night, the dummies were placed on pillows from a distance. It appeared that the prisoners were asleep. Meanwhile, the real prisoners were working on their escape. The deception was brilliant, and it worked. Finally, the night arrived. June 11, 1962. Everything was ready: the raft, the life jackets, the escape route. One by one, the prisoners climbed through the holes, but there was a problem. A fourth conspirator named Allen West could not get through his opening in time. He desperately tried to widen it, but he failed. The others couldn't wait. Time was running out. Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin continued without him. West remained behind. The three men disappeared into the darkness. The escapees climbed through the utility corridor. Then they reached the prison roof. Carefully, they moved across the top of the building, avoiding guard towers, avoiding spotlights, avoiding detection. One mistake could trigger alarms across the entire island. Somehow, they succeeded. After descending the far side of the prison, they reached the shoreline there. They inflated their homemade raft. The freezing waters waited before them, dark, cold, deadly. The men climbed aboard, then pushed away from Alcatraz and vanished into the night. The next morning, a guard approached Frank Morris's cell. Everything seemed normal. Then he looked closer. The prisoner wasn't moving. The guard touched the head. It rolled off the pillow. The prison erupted into chaos. Alarms sounded. Guards rushed everywhere. Every cell was searched. Every building inspected. The truth quickly became clear: 3 prisoners were missing. A massive manhunt began. The FBI joined the investigation. The Coast Guard searched the bay. Boats scanned the water. Helicopters searched from above. Everyone wanted answers. Where were the escapees? Investigators discovered several clues: a paddle, pieces of the raft, a homemade life jacket, personal belongings. These items suggested the prisoners had entered the bay. But the most important evidence was missing: the bodies. No bodies were ever recovered. This created a mystery. Many officials believed the prisoners drowned. The water was cold enough to cause hypothermia. The currents were extremely dangerous, yet without bodies, no one could prove it. And that uncertainty fueled decades of speculation. For years, the FBI investigated every lead, every rumor, every possible sighting. Some reports claimed the Anglin brothers were seen in other states. Others claimed they fled overseas. None could be verified. In 1979, the FBI officially closed the case. Their conclusion was straightforward: the prisoners most likely drowned. But another agency disagreed. The U.S. Marshals Service kept the case open. Technically, the escape remains active, because no definitive proof of death has ever been found. Decades later, a controversial photograph appeared. It allegedly showed John and Clarence Anglin in Brazil. The image sparked intense debate. Supporters claimed the men looked remarkably similar to the escaped brothers. Skeptics disagreed. Experts could not reach a definitive conclusion. The mystery deepened. Were the brothers alive, or was it simply another false lead? No one knew. Then came another surprise. In 2013, authorities revealed a letter. The writer claimed to be John Anglin. The letter stated that all 3 escapees survived. It claimed Frank Morris died years later. The writer also claimed he was elderly and sick. Investigators examined the letter, but they could not confirm its authenticity. Once again, the mystery remained unresolved. Many experts have studied the escape. Some believe survival was possible. Tests have shown that currents on the night of the escape may have actually helped the prisoners. If they launched at the correct time, they could have reached land. The Anglin brothers were experienced swimmers. Their homemade raft may have worked better than investigators originally believed. Others remained skeptical. The water was still extremely dangerous. Conditions were still brutal. Survival was never guaranteed. The debate continues to this day. Then 60 years have passed since that night. Alcatraz is no longer a prison. Today it is a tourist attraction. Millions visit every year. They walk through the empty cell blocks. They stand inside the cells, and they stare at the holes that changed history. Visitors still ask the same question: what happened to Frank Morris? What happened to John and Clarence Anglin? Did they die in the bay, or did they escape into freedom? No one knows for certain. And that uncertainty is exactly why the Alcatraz escape remains one of America's greatest unsolved mysteries. 3 men entered the darkness, and then they simply disappeared.